Welcome to the inaugural Bites with Beck and Benji. Thanks for joining us. Today's discussion will be centered around digital literacy and the apparent need to bring back stranger danger in the context of online identities. We'll be discussing social proof in the age of AI and more, so stay tuned. Over to you, Beck and Benji.
Welcome today to a new thing that we're going to be doing at Friendly Fishing. I'm Benji, and with me today is my colleague Beck, and what we'll be hosting today is a new podcast series called Bites with Beck and Benji. I'll hand over to my colleague Beck to give you a bit of insight as to her background, and we'll kick off the conversation after that.
Man, I just love the phrase stranger danger, and I think it really does need to come back in a huge way. We've been doing it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Beck Caldwell, and I'm the content marketing specialist at Friendly Fishing. And I've been working in search engine optimization, project management, a bit of broadcasting too. And now I'm all in, both feet into cybersecurity. And I love a bit of open source intelligence and a bit of incident response and also psychology, which is a little bit what we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely, and for those that don't know me, my name is Benji Zarella. I'm an e-learning designer here at Friendly Fishing, and I'm responsible for course design and creating the simulated fishing emails that we send out to our level. My career background is primarily in higher education, cybersecurity, digital enablement of various sorts, and I've recently acquired a ICS2 certification. I'm really interested in all things cybersecurity, but I hold a particularly keen interest in foreign interference, open source intelligence, web vulnerabilities, and generative AI technologies more broadly, all of which I think translate directly into the conversation we're about to have today, Beck, around social proof.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
What do you understand when I say social proof?
Well, it's quite broad. In normal terms, it's basically just most people are looking for social cues on how to act in a certain area of their life. And it can be as mundane as, which fork to use at a fine dining restaurant. People look around and see what the majority is doing and then act accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose on the internet, it's, you're looking for a social proof that proves that your opinion is correct.
Absolutely. Justifies, I guess, the information that you have ready at hand, that they agree with that information as well. I think a great example of something that happened relatively recently is with the FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried crypto saga, whereby a lot of people investing in that cryptocurrency, that exchange, they ended up getting very much, I suppose, sucked in by the verifications people like Larry David and Tom Brady, who you as a layman would assume their legal teams and their finance people are doing that due diligence behind the scenes in promoting such an exchange. And it's you and I, the layman regular person, who don't have those resources to, I guess, find out if there would be something that could be nefarious behind that whole setup. And we almost rely on those individuals to make the call so we can kind of follow suit. And it's become harder and harder to do that.
It really is. And, someone that doesn't really understand how all that sort of back end stuff works, they're seeing these famous faces that are backing it. And even those famous faces, they can't be on top of every single time they're mentioned in the media as well. So it might be too little too late when they say, hang on, actually, this isn't how it's meant to be. This is not me saying this, or this is not my endorsement. So if someone's looking for an endorsement by someone they admire and respect, it can still catch you.
Absolutely. And, with the accessibility and just low barrier to entry to generate material based on famous people, it's becoming very complicated to be able to, I guess, identify where exactly social proof is no longer, I guess, as relevant as it was, but also what do we look to in the age of impersonations and deep fakes and generative AI and all this stuff? What is social proof now?
Well, that's it, because I think when you can't see a person, so I mean, obviously there's a deep fake, so you can see a person now sometimes, but when you converse with people on the web, you can fall into a very quick feeling of closeness, because the other person, if they're scamming you, they know exactly how to communicate with you to get you to do what they want. And now that we've got generative AI, the scammers are training this AI to be more empathetic, and they're saying, you are a psychologist in a psychological way. How do I get this person to say yes to this? And they don't have cues like body language, the smile
Absolutely.
reaching the eyes, facial expressions, and things like that. And even that, how would you put it? The spidey sense of unease when you're with someone that might not be trustworthy, you know,
100%.
and it's really fascinating.
This is, I think, ties directly into what friendly phishing also tries to do, in that with all of our coursework and the simulated phishing emails, we very much try to use similar techniques that scammers will use in their laws and in their setups. They will always come with some level of emotional trigger, whether it be excitement or love, or sympathy or guilt or anxiety or fear. It's always leveraging on one or more of those things. Sales tactics being shoved into the social engineering.
Yeah, well, people are so used to it these days. You know, obviously during pandemic times, almost all work was online. So people got lulled into a false sense of security of, okay, all of my interactions are online now, so this is all I've got to kind of to deal with. But that also kind of fostered a sense of loneliness. If people get used to that, even not saying hello to someone in the office, you're very isolated, and you sort of forget that you require a couple of layers of physical security, which is this person a human being or a robot? You know, how do you do the am I a robot check when you're talking to someone online without it being super awkward?
The more aligned we became, the entire human social experience kind of followed suit as well, where everything's online now, your services, your jury duty, and so with that kind of direct access to the brainstem, if you will, through your email, scammers have a much more impactful way to reach out to you as well. Because if you're expecting a jury duty email to come via email instead of a post now, I suppose the landscape of vulnerability increases greatly in how they can leverage those against us. Even in the scanning for scam and looking at the unusual domains and things of that nature, I just reset my Microsoft password here at work, and I got a notification from the domain microsoftonlineservices.com. It was an entirely legitimate email, entirely sent from Microsoft, but the domains that they're using wouldn't necessarily make you think they're legitimate. So even the legitimate social proof that we have is so disparate and inconsistent that you can't even rely on, oh, well, it's from Microsoft, because it's the same sort of domain a scammer would likely register. So I do think there is a part to play with these technology companies not having as much of an impetus for you as the user to know all of these idiosyncrasies. I think those things only help scammers abuse us by not knowing who we should go to and who to rely on.
They do. And just for the people listening, if you don't know what TLD is, it's a top level domain. So when we speak to that, we're looking at, you know, you would expect it to come from office.com or something similar like that. But as Benji just said, they can buy any domain they want, just like a scammer can. And, you know, when you've got lots of branches of a business in a giant organization like Microsoft, there's going to be different email servers and domains used to service each part of that business.
Different teams, different responsibilities.
And that's,
yeah, absolutely.
And that's somehow on us to sort of know, oh, okay, this is a giant conglomerate and this is all of their properties. Now I know what to look out for. It's just not feasible.
We don't have time to do that level of analysis, which is why social proof has always been looked to as one of these like instinct-based things. You look to other people so that you can kind of immediately ascertain what you should be doing and then make that call for yourself. With all of these things becoming so disparate and inconsistent, how does one know what things to look out for, let alone even knowing to look for social proof? What is the new social proof in the age of AI?
And I think that's going to change again in no time at all. I mean,
Absolutely.
We've just put out the new course, Understanding Generative AI, and even the new catfishing course. And we tell you what to spot, but I have a feeling we're going to redo those courses very soon.
I absolutely agree. I almost feel like the material related to these new technologies coming out will almost be like an archive course of like, see how far it's come in a year.
Yeah.
I've been playing with a lot of these generative AI tools in my spare time, and the ones that are most I suppose, confronting in how far they've come in such a short period of time to me is some of the music generation ones. So around January 2023, they would come out with very bad, out of key music with voices that sounded like this and very robotic. And now, just 6 months, 8 months later, they are full instrumentals with recorded voices that actually sing in key. They change the key for the chorus. They're getting exponentially better.
You can have Frank Sinatra like sing Happy Birthday to you, or like sing something that you've written. You can have full arrangements of instruments.
We started out just a dream and a plan. Friendly fishing. We built it by hand.
We started out just a dream and a plan. Friendly fishing, we built it by hand.
We started out just a dream and a plan. Friendly fishing, we built it by hand.
That's it.
I can see why artists are extremely nervous about all this, because it's taking the fun out of life. Like, we didn't want to give robots dominion over our creativity.
Who would have thought that all of us would be sitting there doing spreadsheets while all the robots make music and draw paintings, right?
It's literally the worst part of the evolution of online life, I think. And I don't think we saw it coming.
In saying that, I do think one of the benefits of all that kind of reduction of the barrier to entry is, who knows all the new artists that will come that never thought they could ever be an artist. You know, it has in a way democratized the creative process for individuals, which does again tie into this whole social proof. The only thing preventing you from doing something nefarious is the intent. Now you have all the tools and all the know-how. The only thing stopping you is, should I do that? Maybe I shouldn't do that. It's Damocles' sword, like anything, you know, it'll swing on both sides. But I do value the, I suppose, creative thinking that is now unlocked for people that weren't necessarily creative or didn't consider themselves creative. That said, it also comes down to the copyright and the training of the models and all of these things. It's kind of a larger conversation, obviously, than just that.
Yeah, as you're saying that, something also came to mind. It's kind of an opportunity, because some people grew up with the resources to learn an instrument, to learn how to sing, to go to choir meets and all this kind of stuff. Not everyone had those opportunities. So if you've had that creative itch over time and have always felt held back, that is not true anymore. So it's not actually just about a glut of new creativity. It's an opportunity-based thing. And I think that's a really cool way of, positioning it, because anything that's accessible to people is a good thing, I think.
In the moving through the digital ecosystem of all these tools, I do think that that's where this generative AI really comes into that. If you have different tools that can expedite that whole process, you know now where to slot them in within the process. It's not about revolving the whole workflow around that individual piece. I think there's a great opportunity, as you said, in a lot of these things, as much as there is a double-edged sword of it being used against us.
Yeah, but I think the majority of people will use it, like you said, like a bit of a toolkit, because nobody has the time to devote recreating themselves as an expert in each of these areas. And years ago, if you wanted to get on the radio where it's a little bit more organic and it's live, or even if it's not live, that was really reserved for a small amount of people. And I think, 99% of people wouldn't experience getting their voice heard. So now, although we have to use maybe 10 tools to get this done, it is super accessible and it is an excellent toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. The flip side of all this is, by using these tools, you also get a direct sense of behind the scenes how these tools could be leveraged against you. In the instance of, the more we use these tools more broadly, the more we incorporate them into our workflow, that almost becomes the social proof we need, because you see what the output is, and that therefore you recognize the output later. You're kind of like, I know where that came from. The more generative AI art that I see, the more I can pick what is a generative AI piece of art because they all share similar characteristics. And
Mm.
this will change, and it'll change every week and every day and every year. But currently, they do all have this kind of uncanny valley still feeling
Yeah.
when you see them, particularly when you're creating a lot of it, you see a lot more commonalities across all different types.
Especially if you give it instructions to copy a style from, say, a famous artist,
Absolutely.
whether that's a painter or a singer, things like that. And yeah, I mean, one of the cool things, this is a slight diversion, but I'm seeing that there's new products to poison AI so that it can't then be used as original material. So things like Nightshade.
Nightshade,
And I
yep.
think there's a few more that are coming out, and I'm really hoping there's one that we can use as a layer in between us and a recording to stop our voices being printed, to stop our
Yeah.
faces being used in facial recognition where it shouldn't be.
100%. The voice cloning thing is remarkably accessible. You can also go to things like Google Cloud and just kind of start experimenting with some of these voices that will absolutely be making their way into customer support. Those voices will be the voices that you hear everywhere when you call an Optus or a Medibank or any of these companies that have frontline support. They're getting better every day, particularly those Australian voices. There are certain words that you can kind of tell if you know,
They're a
but
bit off.
for the most part, out of the box, I require no experience. It costs me $1 a month. I want to tell you that you have a voicemail from the ATO. Call me back on this mobile number. Perfectly achievable for very little effort, very little money.
This is an example of a generated audio clip. It is created to synthesize human-like sounding voices in a variety of contexts. We can get this voice to say anything, even things like, "This is the ATO calling regarding your overdue tax return." Always be cautious when relying entirely on audio.
Which is one of those things where, at least in a forum like this online, there is some level of visual appeal, visual interaction. Like, I am physically sitting here, my mouth is physically moving when words are coming out. When we're just on a phone and someone could even line up several recordings with a soundboard and play them as though it's a conversation.
Like an 8-track, just hitting all the different responses.
100%. Hi, this is Benji calling from the ATO. You say, oh, what's this about? I'm calling today about your overdue fine. I don't have any overdue fines. Well, actually, what we found is, and you just queue up all the things that you would need to convince them that this is a legitimate call. And I feel like, what does one do then? Like, beyond actively hanging up the phone, calling up the ATO again, which is literally the only thing you can do, I think the propensity people have to trust others, particularly in service areas, is much greater online than it is in person, because we've had these things like stranger danger growing up and things like that, whereas now there's no choice. You have to deal with people that you get linked up to online or who reach out to you online. I think people have a little bit of, they don't want to be rude and just hang up the phone or say, no, I'll figure out if this is a scam myself.
Yeah.
Protecting yourself is not rude. You can do it in a very polite way. I don't have time for this. I'm going to call the ATO back in 10 minutes or whatever have you. But the not wanting to offend someone is not enough reason to go along with a scam, assuming there is nothing telling you that it is in fact legitimate.
Yeah. And I feel, there's a lot of statistics that I don't have to hand at the moment, but it makes sense that some of the older generations will fall for it a bit more because they're more used to picking up the phone. I mean, I make phone calls for work-related reasons. It's very rare that I would pick up the phone and call someone other than my mother. So, if I get these text messages and these emails, I think, now I've got to call someone. Or if someone calls me and I think, okay, that's my bank's name coming up on my mobile, I should pick it up. But that can be spoofed as well.
And that's something they're doing now as well, is they'll spoof the name of a bank so it goes in the legitimate trail of the bank SMS. So then it's not even two separate things. So you can see this is the fake one, this is the Westpac one. It comes within the original Westpac bank trail. And that stuff can be incredibly nefarious because that social proof, it's in the Westpac trail. It's OG. It's all fine. And it was actually something you told me about the other day, Beck, which was the International Women's Day. You actually rightly mentioned to me around how there's been a scam going for many years. And do you want to give some insight on that?
Yeah. Scam is probably, I guess it is the right word. So, a marketing company with some fairly I guess, dodgy background, put up internationalwomen'sday.com. So that's, you know, top level domain with social proof right there, because people want to celebrate equity in the workplace and, you know, safety for women. And it looks legit. And it probably is legit as far as anyone can tell. But the thing is, it's not part of the UN. And the UN is the organization that coined International Women's Day for the betterment of girls and women around the world. So you've got two themes happening every year. And, you know, you Google IWD, the fake one comes up. The UN one is maybe like 10 places below.
And while that's the scary thing. Because that's the social proof, right? Google is the social proof, the top thing. That's the legitimate one always, right?
And the UN URL is unwomen.org, which, while it has a .org, people aren't going to know that's the UN. It's unwomen. Is that a thing? I'm not going to click through to that.
Yes.
And is it okay to just celebrate this theme over this theme? What's the harm? But the harm is both of the websites are taking money for toolkits for your workplace to celebrate it. So we don't know where that money is going to that marketing agency. We know that if it's going to the UN, it is going to the things that they're doing to support women and girls, whereas the marketing company, we have no clue where that money is going.
There's also certain stipulations around who can and can't register a .org top-level domain. You generally have to be some level of not-profit or government organization to receive those TLDs. So the notion that this other random one could be a privatized for-profit, those donations that were in theory meant to go to a non-profit organization are now going to some for-profit privatized corporation. That's an issue. People are being misled.
Exactly. And the thing is, they might still have the best of intentions, but they certainly don't have the access to charitable foundations to give this money to. And with a lot of charities out there that have a retail facing, there's money going to like their staff. There's there's a lot of money to go around, and how much of it's going to go to the actual charity that they say they're representing.
Absolutely. It's amazing how much the SEO side of Google can be abused. Pay a couple of bucks and Google promotes them.
Yeah, there's a lot of scams out there that all started with just small innocent things, and it's the evolution of it has just gotten out of control. And I guess my question is, at what point does lying about yourself become a catfish, especially now that it's just completely different beast? And that's, again, the stranger danger sort of situation of, all of that emotional stuff is there. Like, we're talking to someone that I think likes us or something like that.
We want to impress as well, show our best foot forward or whatever, It just comes down to that intent, right? I remember one of my single friends mentioning the phrase to me, hat fishing. It's when gentlemen on these dating apps have a hat, but they're actually bald, but you wouldn't realize that from all the photos. Hat fishing. So yeah, that's kind of not. It's pretty benign. It's nothing too bad. It's like just general dating faux pas stuff that you probably shouldn't do, but like it is what it is. But where does that kind of go to? I'm doing this with the sole intention of getting something out of you. And it's not, relations or anything. It's generally monetary or your identity, right? It's harder for people to come to concrete conclusions around someone being not forthcoming. And a great example would be like romance scams. One of the more common things that I've seen in my kind of cursory research is people claiming that they're either in the military and that's why they can't do, that's why they can only respond at weird hours. That's why they can never have calls because it's always too noisy in the background.
Yeah.
You can always kind of throw something out there to throw people off the scent as to the legitimate reason as to why you're being not legitimate.
And it can sound exciting, especially with that military thing. It's like, I'm in a secure location. I can't reveal my location. I can't turn on my camera. It's been shut down. I mean, these are
you
some
can buy
things
that.
Well, it's probably true in some cases, but the thing is, I don't think, for me at least, I don't think, if you're deployed, what are you doing on a dating app anyway? If nothing's accessible to you, if you're not able to like actually enter into some sort of relationship, that would be my red flag anyway. Like, okay, what are you doing?
And I guess that's it, right? Is what threshold do individuals individually have to kind of point out those things? Like, if that's a red flag for you, but someone who's, I suppose, potentially more lonely or is maybe younger or older, They may be less experienced or more experienced in dating, and then be like, oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, I've dated someone in the military before, or that. It's just about convincing enough people that you get what you want from your real intent, right? It's not about convincing everyone. And that's, I think, the game of the scammer is more often than not, they'll probably get found out. But the people that do pay them, they will never forget it. They'll never forget it.
Yeah, and that's why it's so relentless, because just like regular dating, it's a numbers game. Just get as many people as possible, and you'll get that vulnerable person that just wants to talk, and they're so happy that you respond with kindness and future plans and things like that.
Love bombing, just like, oh, you're amazing, I'm so glad that we met, oh, we have so much in common, I love talking about dogs, or playing checkers or chess or whatever it is, and we bond over that thing because you're so special that I found you over that thing. And I guess this ties into how impersonation more broadly, kind of across romance scams, employment scams, all of these scams that rely on a certain level of authority or urgency or compassion. I think there are certain cyber case studies that people will point to over time that's the point things changed. And one of them, I think, happened more recently, where a finance worker agreed to pay out $25 million after a video call with a deepfake chief financial officer. But the details of those stories are even more fascinating, where the individual received a phishing email, was incredibly suspicious of the phishing email at the start. However, their suspicions were completely allayed when they signed on to the Zoom call, and there were several people there.
And his boss
all
is there.
Deepfaked. Not a single real human was there. And I feel like it's one of those, yeah, I would have spotted it, but when you're surrounded by authoritative figures and you're not in a position to question things, I don't think the people question things. Do you know what I mean? Going back to that whole, they don't want to be rude, or they don't want to come off as aggressive or whatever else. So I can see this happening a lot more with that ability to mass profile people, pick a target, and then find out as much about that small group of people as we need to then be able to replicate their voices and their likeness. It's becoming remarkably achievable to do these types of sophisticated scams.
Yeah, I agree. And even if you take away that level of sophistication with deep fakes, which just blows my mind, by the way. I mean,
Absolutely.
Bravo to them, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to see a recording excerpt or something, like the quality of deep fake.
Yeah, but it could still be deployed in a much, like, I say lesser, it's not lesser, but it is in the context of what we're talking about. Yeah. Like a chatbot, just, you could deploy 1 million chatbots on 1 million dating app websites, or take over a chatbot on a legitimate website and get information that way. That requires almost zero human interaction on the scammer side if they've trained them well. So, and this is a kind of a funny thing that came out a few years ago. One of Google's engineers for Lambda, I think it was Blake Lemoine, he actually said, I think eventually it's just going to become a real person, like, and it will be indistinct.
He thought it was a real person, right?
Yeah.
He had like in-depth conversations about like its
personal conversations.
Yeah.
And if someone that sort of smart, at least, and who was part of the team that made this thing, how can a layperson sort of have an emotional conversation or a fun conversation with a chatbot and not think, I trust this thing, this is totally fine? And what kind of secrets are people sharing with basically a robot, a digital stranger that can then put everything into a spreadsheet that
just
goes...
aggregates it all, passes it up to my lord? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
To that chatbot automated disinformation, misinformation thing, just look at Twitter. If you simply, in the search bar of Twitter, type in the automated response that you get from most LLMs when they can't produce a response because of their guidelines, so like, as an AI language model, I am not allowed to produce blah, 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 blah. If you just, in quotes, put that in the Twitter search bar, you will find hundreds of individual posts by people that are not actual individuals, but rather linked to a GPT that just posts all this stuff en masse. So I prompted to say something nefarious about Russia and Ukraine, and then my army of bots all post something slightly similar, denigrating Ukraine or Russia or what have you. And then suddenly hundreds of people are thinking this on Twitter when really it was one individual with a script and a GPT.
And that's basically the definition of how this social proof can derail a huge amount of people, and it creates an echo chamber for things that people have left unsaid, but now that they're seeing it everywhere, they're like, oh, maybe there is something to it.
Exactly. And that's the other side of the social proof, is if there isn't something to look to, if you do look to it to make you think the wrong behavior, like modeling the incorrect thing to do, or modeling, disinformation, sharing that around, it does have that almost backwards effect of you're then proliferating disinformation, not just falling victim to disinformation.
Yeah, for sure.
Easier said than done.
Extremely easier said than done. So, we've got like a lot of tips for people on how to spot all of this kind of stuff, but it really does just come down to being self-aware and being curious about where you heard something, or like what someone's telling you. And yeah, trying to get those other levels of verification going. But I get it. Human beings are awkward people. And
yep. And we're to a degree also a bit lazy. If we think we know a thing, or if that's good enough, I think people are just like, yeah, that's good enough. I trust the source enough that is now internalized, and that is what I think. And bringing back stranger danger online, I think, is something that we can all definitely get behind, in terms of not everyone's there to help you. And in fact, on the internet, most people aren't.
That's so true. And, I think people should have a look at some of our new courses, just to sort of get it in front of their eyes as to like how exactly that would all work. But hey, this has been such a great chat, Benji.
It's been really enjoyable.
As usual, we've gone on tangents and we've explored a lot of different topics today, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's great. I hope everyone listening enjoys it too.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Beck and I are incredibly lucky to have this opportunity to discuss these wide-ranging topics and how they change constantly. And hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, chat to you next time.
Signing off.